This is lesson 3.3, one-step justifications with angle pairs and parallel lines. So this is going to feel a little similar to what we've done in previous lessons because we've done one-step justifications before. We know a given and we make a conclusion. So if this is true, then this is true. But why? And so that's what we're going to work on in this lesson. So here we go. The first one says A is parallel to B. That's our given. So if I want to put my tick marks in my picture here, I put the little arrows. That means that they're parallel. So if A is parallel to B, then angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So there's angle 1 and angle 2. So I've already given you the conclusion. So if they're parallel, then angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Why do we know that? Well, what type of angle pair relationship do angle 1 and 2 have? I hope you are thinking that they are alternate interior angles. Remember, they're both in the interior of our lines and they're on different sides of the transversal, so they are alternate interior angles. Well, if you think back to section 3.2, our theorem said if lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. So we are able to write that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 because if we have two parallel lines crossed by a transversal, then alternate interior angles are congruent. All right, the next one. Well, the next one says that line T is parallel to line H. So again, I can put my tick marks in. And if I know T and H are parallel, what conclusion can I make? Well, you guys, there's actually a ton of conclusions you can make here. We could say 1 is congruent to 5 because if lines are parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. Or I could say 2 is congruent to 8 because alternate exterior angles are congruent. Let's look at what we have written right here, though. This says angle 3 is congruent to angle 8. So that's also a true conclusion because there's 3 and there's 8. And we know if two parallel lines are crossed by a transversal, then these angles are congruent. What kind of angles are they? Well, hopefully you are thinking corresponding. So we know if two parallel lines are crossed by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. So that is why we know angle 3 is congruent to angle 8 because the lines are parallel. So again, it's all about that hypothesis conclusion. If this, then this, why? Okay, so let's try a few more. The first one says L is parallel to M. So we know line L is parallel to line M. And we know, again, a bunch of things in that diagram. But the one that we are looking for is angle 3 and angle 6 are supplementary. So if the lines are parallel, then 3 and 6 are supplementary. Well, let's figure out why. Well, 3 and 6 are a special angle pair, and they are called same side interior angles. They're on the same side of the transversal. They're both above it, if you can think of it that way, and they're both in the interior. So they are same side interior angles, and we know that same side interior angles are supplementary if the lines are parallel. So we say if two parallel lines are crossed by a transversal, then same side interior angles are supplementary. All right. Now, if you would like to pause the video at this point and try out the next two examples and then come back to see how you did, that might be a good idea. Okay, so the next one says P is parallel to T. So we know P and T are parallel. And it asks us to make the next step of angle 1 is congruent to angle 7. Well, here's angle 1 and here's angle 7, and it says they're congruent. You should have written, if two parallel lines are crossed by a transversal, then alternate exterior angles are congruent. That is why we know angle 1 is congruent to angle 7. Now the last one, I hope you were careful on this one. So this one says that L and M are parallel lines. Well, that's great. Then it says angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Here's angle 1. Here's angle 3. Do we know angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent because of something related to the parallel lines? Nope. Angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent because they're vertical angles, and vertical angles are always congruent. So it actually is not a conclusion that is drawn directly from this. It's a conclusion that we know just because we know they're vertical angles. So our reasoning here should simply be if two angles are vertical, then, I missed my N, then they are congruent. That is what we know for angle 1 and angle 3. Now, had our conclusion been something different, let's say our conclusion is angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. This 1 and 4, that is drawn directly from the fact that these are parallel. And that is that 1 and 4 are corresponding angles. So we would say if two lines are parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. So that's what we could write for another step if we were writing a proof. We would say if two lines are parallel and cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. So sometimes a statement is made just from something else we know, but sometimes it comes directly from the fact that we have parallel lines. More practice with proofs as we continue this chapter.